get started then. So we do our introductions first, and then I'll go over our introduction slides. So my name is Laura Thorne, and I'm a career coach, consultant, and now working to start this publishing company that we'll talk about in a minute. And welcome all of you here. Excited for another year of this book club. So we've gone through an entire 12 months to today, which is awesome and super exciting. When Lisa and I started this, it was just like, hey, let's give this a try and see what happens. So super thrilled that it's been, just so helpful for everybody and such great connections. So go around and introduce yourselves, say, maybe a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you're located maybe. So I'm in Syracuse, New York. And because as we grow, we kind of want to try to get people from everywhere. And we had for a moment, and I think Sade will join us again at some point. She moved from London to Saskatchewan. So
across the world.
Yeah. So hopefully in 2021, we'll continue to grow a little bit. So Sarah, you want to start with?
Sure. I'm in Syracuse area as well, Lafayette. I breed alpacas, which is the connection with Jody. And I'm also a retired special ed teacher. And I got into both the alpacas and my other side hustle at the same time. So I'm also been using Young Living essential oils. So I do have built a small business on that as well. And because of COVID, I couldn't do the subbing as I had hoped to do because, well, it's gross. All those germs go to kids. So I ended up with a part-time job presented to me, which is completely up my alley, the Learning Disabilities Association of Central New York. So I'm just beginning that, but again, because of COVID, the onboarding has taken a while. So at least the books and stuff give me something to do that I feel like I'm making some sort of progress in a forward manner.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Kim, let's give us some Florida news.
It's hot here. When I woke up at 6 this morning, it was already 70 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm Kim Tapley. I live here in Tampa, Florida. I am in the environmental regulatory field. So me and my staff review all the development permits, applications that come through for sites that want to build either in or near wetlands.
Thank you. How about Tanya?
Hello, I am Tanya Eastman. I wear two hats. I'm the Director of Operations at On Point for College, which is here in Syracuse, New York. And I have an emerging consulting firm in the nonprofit capacity building space.
Awesome. And looking forward to see what you do with that. Jennifer?
Jennifer Daly. I work for Gateway Consulting and Coaching. I'm the systems and process person. I'm near Syracuse as well, Bridgeport, New York. And my sister's Lisa, who has to go next.
Is that last but least for my sister?
No, the best. I'm standing at my new desk that my sister got me a desk.
Oh, nice.
So I'm at a stand-up desk now. So no, you're the best.
The gift that keeps on giving. Well, with that, I am Lisa Sears, and I live in Black Mountain, North Carolina, but I commute to upstate New York to see my friends in Syracuse and upstate New York. I've got a couple really great clients when I relocated that I didn't want to give up. I do a lot of business and capacity consulting, and I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, but more specifically financial advisors lately have really been, I come from that industry and just have been having a lot of fun helping people manage their practices in a better way. So it's been a fun year. And with Laura, we did start this book club, and I cannot believe it's been a year, Laura. I thought the same thing. It's so great. And I look forward to this every month. Whether I like the book or not, I really look forward to this connection. So
awesome. So here we go, year 2. I'm going to screen share if my mouse will find the button. Okay, so we always go through this just so as we have newcomers and to keep us on point. So this was the 20 and 20 book challenge. Obviously, we have outlived that. So we're now just going into calling ourselves the High Impact Reading Challenge. And give my computer a minute to catch up with us here. So this will change for next month, but let's see. So today's book discussion is around Made to Stick by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, who are brothers. And this was a book that I chose to reread, and I'll talk about that when we get to chatting. So our agenda was the quick intros we already did, and then we'll get into the round robin talking about the book and just opening up to comments and then what we have next. But the ground rules are, so we are recording. These will go up on YouTube. They're currently going underneath my consulting YouTube, but now that we're moving under the publishing, next month they'll move underneath the publishing company. And everyone is entitled to their own opinions. So, you know, one person may love the book and everyone else may hate it or vice versa, but we're all entitled to our own opinions here and just have some fun. This, like Lisa said, is something that we look forward to every month, and it's just been great to read these books and pull in the information to hear what other people thought were good points and share the wealth on that. And then we're kind of looking for in your discussion about the book is how helpful was it to you? You know, it depending on your space, like Kim is more in a consulting management field, or if you're an entrepreneur, is the book relevant to your particular audience? Is it helpful to you? Were you able to put certain things into action? How does it rate or compare to different books that may have been similar? And then is there a favorite quote or point that was made? And maybe what you liked least about it. And then generally a thumbs up or thumbs down. As we just went through the voting for this year to pick next year's books, at the end of this year, we will go through a similar voting type situation. And a couple of the books from this year will carry through until 2022. So our next book is going to be Extreme Ownership, How the U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and we will discuss that on January 28th. And then just a quick note about, don't mind all of this text, the book club is going to rebrand into the High Impact Reading Challenge underneath Wildebeest Publishing Company, and Wildebeest Publishing Company is all about being yourself, publishing, if you're a coach or consultant, publishing books that will help you get your points across, things that you might need to share with your clients and would like to sell to the general public, maybe bring some interest to you. All about, like it says, being yourself, running wild, taking leaps. And so we will all turn into beastie readers. And so the things that will stay the same, Lisa and I will still be the co-host, alternating the leading of the meeting. We're still reading the same type of books. It's still a challenge, and the two different challenges are read every book, but then the second challenge is even if you didn't read the book, still come to the meeting, come to the discussion, hear what other people had to say about the book. Maybe you never read a book, you just want to come in and pop it and hear the conversations about them. It's a great way to draw in and get the highlights without having to spend the 7 hours it took to listen to this book. And it's just also, like we've seen, a great way to connect and meet with other people. And as we grow, it'll be people from all over. And then we're still going to meet the last Thursday of the month. So what's going to be new is that we now have Kim, Tanya, and Jody as our ambassadors, because we're assuming that at some point we might outgrow just having enough time to introduce ourselves in these rooms, and we'll have to go into breakout sessions. And that will be another great way to get more intimate with different people from different places and get into little pocket discussions. And they will be the ones who help us do that. And then, so like I said, we're moving it underneath the Wildebeest Publishing Company just to pull it. Makes more sense to be under the book house instead of underneath Lisa or I's space. And then as we grow, it does take some overhead to do the book selections and the PDFs and just kind of keep people informed. So we're looking for people to join. Continue to come for free if that's what you're at, especially if you're just popping in here and there. But as a supporter level, you can join for $5 a month just to help us cover the cost of keeping all of the stuff up to date and continuing to post on Facebook and all that. And then at sponsor level, we're going to try to add on a whole bunch of fun stuff. Tanya is already one of our sponsors. So thank you, Tanya. That's so awesome. And so she will get her acknowledgement on the board. In the future, on these presentations, when we start in the front, she will be acknowledged there. And then there's a t-shirt coming and fun stuff like that. And then as the publishing company gets started, which is preparing to launch officially in June, there'll be like first round discounts and different things like that that people who are sponsors will get first access to. So the like I was talking about, these are the 3 different levels, and you can just go to the website. And still, even if you are already a member and already coming, if you could go and rejoin on the member list, even if you join just for free, just so that you can get back on the list. Because if you were on the list before, you were on my personal list. Now it's moving under the book club. So I need to re-ask for people to join instead of just automatically transferring people over, because that's not legal. And so I appreciate everyone taking the time to do that. And with that, we can start talking about the book. I chose the book because I read it the first time and really only got to skim the highlights. And there were so many things that I thought, oh, I could use that for not only for copyright in my website, but Facebook posts. And I have a huge problem with the curse of knowledge. I'm always, as Lisa tells me, fire hosing people with way too much information, and I've been told my emails are too wordy, everything. So I really wanted to reread this book, and I thought it really applies to just about anybody, because you've got to, no matter what your situation is, you have to get your point across and get people to take action or be inspired or whatever it may be. So does anybody want to start the conversation? I'll volunteer Kim if no one else does.
Well, I always will.
Okay.
Did Kim volunteer?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. So when I started to read this book, it was more, I had like my Don Draper hat on, not my like Lisa Sears hat. And I kept like really relating it to marketing. And I was really pleased as I went through more of the book. I started to see it as a tool for more like what you're saying, Laura, but for more keeping, I do a lot of programs and I do some workshops. And how do I get, when I'm so excited about what I have to share with people, like how do you chunk that down? How do you get them involved, like to even want to come? I think is important. Like how do you engage them on the front end of things? But also when you're presenting, like, the disgruntled people who did all that work that only that they like pulled 3 bricks out of this huge, concept is sometimes a disappointment for me, because I do want to share with people. But I think this book really, for me, hit on, you can't just share, like you've got to make things consumable for people. And I think that's just like the best tool for me. I almost would have liked it a little. I think when you said you skimmed it, Laura, that makes sense to me the first time around, because I almost like would have liked it as like an ebook. Like there was a lot of examples, and I some of the chapters I was like, okay, I got it. Like I got it. Yeah. But I thought they were, very helpful. My favorite part was when they said Lance Armstrong was a good sport because he let the guy. When was this book written?
Yeah, really.
That
And the Jared thing.
Yeah, there was a couple spots it was dated.
It was great though. I was like, oh, yep, okay. I think from there where I'm going to use it. So technically not my most favorite book to listen to, but I did like the content. I do think that I will find a summary of it online, and I'm doing a little pilot for my nonprofit Life Cycles Academy, which is I'm pretty sure I'm going to try to get a small group of EDs like ready for strategic planning, because I think we just throw them into strategic planning. But what does readiness look like? So I'm going to pull this book out. I'm going to use it as a tool for not only my marketing for the pilot, but also what I'm going to present on, and try to really stay concise and light. And I love to tell stories, so really kind of live in that world. So thanks for this recommendation, Laura.
Awesome. Glad you enjoyed it. Kim, would you like to go now?
Sure. I've been staying on mute because the children are in the other room and they're just creating a ruckus. So I agree with Lisa. I love the examples in the book. It was very helpful for me to understand where they were going and how they were trying to implement their ideas on how to make their ideas sticky or other people's ideas sticky. And there's so many good things that I can use for my group for environmental projects. One of the big ones that I started using even before I read this book just recently is I try and make wetlands more concrete in that concrete chapter, because I'm always, save the wetlands, protect the wetlands, don't build in the wetlands. And everybody is like, yeah, Kim, we've heard it. We know all the time. But now what I've started to do is say, no, 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 this wetland is the headwaters to English Creek. You don't want to affect English Creek. And then the public and people say, oh, I take my dog for walks to English Creek, or I fish in English Creek. So it's more concrete, it's more relatable. It's not one of those abstract concepts. So that's one thing that I think I was doing it, but I hadn't verbalized to different people, and my staff how to do it. And this book helps me verbalize and, explain to them how important it is to go about doing that. There's another one, the mystery, the curiosity, the knowledge gap that he talks about, I thought was very important, because I have a hard time engaging staff sometimes to do history of properties. So what we have to do is, when a new application comes in, it's important to know what has gone on in the past. Do they have past permits? Is there past earthwork? Is there protected areas on site? That sort of thing. And it's very time consuming and can be tedious to do that. But in order to engage them, I've told them it's like a mystery novel. You're unfolding the mystery of the site to
Like CSI.
to figure out what's going to happen at the end. Is the project going to be approved? What's the wetland going to look like? So those are all important points that were made that are directly relatable to my field. And then the last one, the whole book made me think of Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he is, a phenomenal physicist, but he's so popular because he makes his ideas stick. His ideas, even though, they're physics, theoretical physics, he can condense it down to terminology most people can understand. He's relatable. And that's why he's on so many talk shows and everything, because of that. And so I've tried to not be like Neil deGrasse Tyson, but at least when I'm doing presentations to non-scientists, try to have my presentation be like that. In the end, I like the book. I love all the examples. I do think there was a lot of examples, maybe condense those down would be my only suggestion for the book. But yeah, I thought it was a great book. Good choice.
Good. And those are great reflections on how to use it. And I think too, like if they had rewritten it, or if they did a revised version or something, Neil deGrasse Tyson would be a great example to put in there. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I didn't, when I first read it, didn't catch that. The second read definitely did. But what was really interesting the second read time around is I remembered every word of that book. Some of it I was like, did I just read this twice? Because there are parts where they kind of repeat to make it stick. And then, but I was like, this is the stickiest material ever, because I would go back. The second time I read it, it was like I just read it again yesterday, when usually I reread a book and I don't remember half of it, and it's all brand new. But it was like, nope, I remember that first time. Oh yeah, I remember that. So, well, thanks, Kim. Those are great examples. I thought the Don't Mess with Texas was one of my favorite examples, and they're in their 30th year now, and it just keeps getting like, and I'm like, okay, why aren't we doing this in other states, especially like here in Syracuse where the trash problem is so bad? So maybe that'll be on my list of things to tackle in the future. Maybe who wants to go next?
I don't mind going next.
Go ahead, Jen.
So like Kim was saying, that she, like, some of the content in the book, she was already doing the things but didn't like realize it. And some of the things that stuck with me that I could really relate is that I learned in a business course 20 years ago and didn't think of it until I was reading a passage here. You have to KISS for your small business. Keep it simple, stupid. And I'm like, I have not had that pop in my mind in so long. And why did I remember that from 20 years ago? And I was like, wow, this really works. And I loved, like, I'm not good with conceptual like numbers. I can't see when things are this percentage or this percentage. I always relate it. I go, okay, there's 15%. 15 of these people out of 100. I always have to like go second and third steps. And then when they did the soccer analogy, I was like, oh, wow, that's like really, if somebody explained something to me like that, that would stay with me. Just running through percentages wouldn't. And it's like the other, the brown versus blue eyes, doing that with like elementary kids, to have them have, that's such a huge thing that most adults don't even realize, that I was like, wow, that's impressive. So, and I really liked it. I liked all of the examples. Of course, I read it, I didn't listen to it. So I think that's a lot easier as well. But the honesty and trustworthiness, when it was for the credible part of it, I think that's like some of the people I follow, or some of the people I will donate time to, like in my father's kitchen in Syracuse. Like if you follow him and you see what he does, and he's just a person and he's great, like I see why people would focus on that, and I liked it. So
And
overall,
their
I gave it.
sauce is the best ever.
Oh yeah.
I eat it on everything. I'm like, oh, I need
Do
pasta
you really?
sauce.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I love it.
But it's, I just was like, wow, oh, Velcro hooks.
Yeah.
I'm like, all these things. I'm like, I didn't know that that's what was happening, but that's what was happening to me. So it made me open my eyes to a lot of things that are already going on for me. So I really liked it.
I would agree with Jen on that analytical piece. Like that was such interesting information that I think a lot of us get tripped up with because people want the data.
Yeah.
So it was a really nice, like we can shift into data, but leading without
Yeah.
analytics, I think that was a really smart part of the book.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much, because you know, Kim and I know too from a science background, there's so much data out there that is only, like they did explain, one part of the problem, and they're not showing you the whole picture. And that's just used so much in consulting and business and leadership. It's like, this is a statistic, but you don't have all the background other stuff to compare it to. And so I'm like very anti putting statistics into like marketing or whatever, just because it just is, even if it's real, it's almost like, so what?
Yeah.
You know, so
Right.
I appreciated having some validation on that. Like just share the stories that exemplify those statistics. Tanya?
Yeah, so I started, I will admit, I started and I was like, and it's partly because it's actually something I'm working on. Like many of you know that know me, like I read for purpose, or I listen for purpose. And so I very quickly try and assess, does this connect to some part of my life? And if it doesn't, then why am I really reading it or listening? And so I'm working on that because I don't give things a chance. Like Untamed, I started Untamed, listening to it. I'm like, I don't know. But then I kept going. I'm like, there's a reason I'm listening to this. But anyway, so I started, I'm like, you know, the consulting space, I don't know if this is really going to relate to that. And then I really got into it, especially with the examples. And it started with the commander's intent. I'm like, I can see where this can be really helpful. And, you know, my life at On Point, the consulting space, you know, the workshops that I do and the teaching that I do. And I really, I got to say, I went down almost the little bit of like mania hole, which Laura and Lisa know, because you get these random emails. And so I like pulled out my notebooks, and especially the chapter on concrete, I struggle with that. And one of the tasks I was supposed to do over break, which I've not done yet, is my mission for the consulting work that I'm going to be doing, and really what is my space and how, the whole positioning stuff. And what I had been articulating was so abstract. And I'm like, and it was that cursive knowledge, using language. My dissertation was on succession planning, and that's such an abstract concept. And what is it really? And so I just started writing notes on top of other notes, and I found it really helpful. So I spent probably, this is sort of embarrassing, like 3 hours on the concrete chapter, because I started, you can see my this is my layer on layer with my stuff for the consulting space about sort of where I want to show up and how I want to show up and what language really matters. And so I really enjoyed the book. It's funny how things tie together. In the beginning, they talk about sticking, and I read a book just the other day on your one word for the year to try and simplify. And so they talk about having that one word to stick. And so I've been getting this idea of articulate your thoughts in a way that they stick. And as I look to do more in the teaching space, that idea of making the abstract more accessible and simplifying. And one of the analogies in the book was around teaching accounting, which is actually financial management is the class that I teach, facilitate in the doctorate program. And we preface with saying, okay, we're going to have to do the hard work of talking about financial statements, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. And it was like an aha moment, okay, we can make that fun if we really think about more of a case study approach, or making it applicable to what these doctoral candidates are doing, so that we're not rushing through the technical stuff, but making it stick probably better. So 2 thumbs up.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I actually thought about you a couple of times during the book. I was like, oh, this will be good for Tanya, because I just know that you're in that beginning stage, throwing it all together, right? And, and I'm still in that stage, trying to kind of, it's already out there in that too much word. I have on my pending to-do list is redo my website so it's more simplified, because there's just too much word vomit on there. Mm-hmm. And, so I'm glad to hear that it came around for you.
Yeah.
Sarah, how'd it go for you?
Oh, it was good. I did like all the stories, and that's good that they used that as, putting it into practice, what they were trying to teach me to do. A lot of it kind of dovetailed with my teaching background anyways. So some of it was like, oh yeah, we've been doing that, but it's nice to think of it outside of the classroom and apply it in different areas. One thing I really kind of liked was the cursive knowledge, because that concept is typical when I'm working with any of my team members and stuff. I have to make sure that they are meeting and teaching their people where those folks are at, and not just hitting them with all the jargon, and they're like, no. And similarly, when I have new alpaca owners coming on board, I have to really stop myself from just vomiting all over them with all the information, and chunk it so that they can get it. And then I usually send them some sort of document so they have a reference and not just have to listen to me, because not everybody understands and concepts when they hear them. They need to have it repeatable and referencing and all that. So it was really good. But yeah, some of those stories were a bit dated, but yeah, it was a good listen, and I do that when I'm driving. So
good. Yeah, I used to get a lot more reading in with I don't drive anymore, so
yeah.
now I have really found it a struggle to try to finish the books now. For a while, when I was driving places, it was no problem at all. I was reading a couple books a month, but now I'm having a hard time finishing just the one. Of course, I'm kind of reading other books at the same time, but
yeah. And I've had the habit of doing that anyways, since both of my small businesses began in 2006. At least the habits that I developed with the one carried over to the other, and professional and personal development is very encouraged with the Young Living Corporation. So that's something that we've always done. So it's kind of neat to take another look at some of the books that I've heard or listened to before, because I'm in a different place. Retirement's very different than working and you're running flat out all the time. So it's like, oh, I can breathe.
Absolutely, and that's a good point. You know, the entire first year were books that Lisa and I had already read. So, you know, we wanted to come back, and it was very interesting to see how something you read the first time, you catch different things too. Just the same way that we all catch different, you know, different examples resonate with each one of us. You know, so, you know, it kind of also, if they had put less examples, they have a less chance of reaching as many people too. So there are a bunch of summaries and worksheets and different things online. I think my assistant Ilaria, she shared one last week.
Yeah.
Group on Facebook. So if you find any too, like, feel free to share those in the group.
Okay.
So that other people can. Yes, that one was good too. I like that, just to like, I'm gonna go back and look at my presentations and then ask myself, is this simple? Do I have emotion in this? Do I just kind of like just use it as ask those questions in the very end of the book where they have the epilogue. Just ask yourself, is it simple? Is there emotion in this? Like, just sort of use it as a checklist or review forever. Like, just kind of keep it available for marketing, for a new web page or a new program, whatever.
Yeah, I have a bulletin boards in front of me here, and one is for the most part dedicated to Reagan, my daughter. And then I've said, okay, I'm going to draw a line in the sand between the two, and this one is hers, and this one is actually related to stuff that is going to be good for me to look at. And so this was one of the things that I printed, because I love the one pager, and the visual sort of remembering and having that reminder will be helpful. I thought was interesting too. It's I'm sort of reconsidering the recommendation now. So one of the books, so I joined you guys later in the year. One of the books I had submitted that has been accepted for next year, I actually think next December, is Strategic Intuition, which really aligns really well with the content in this book, although it's much more academic. And I'm like, okay, maybe this. And so I was reading Made to Stick, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the similar idea of having that file cabinet and making that space to be aware of how things connect and things like that, which I thought was really, it was interesting how sort of things go for full circle there, you know.
Yeah.
But I also think that's like our book club too, is that we don't mind reading it again. So if it's a similar book and it's next December, it might be the perfect time for it, Tanya. Like, it might remind us about Made to Stick and give us a new like spin on it. So
you'll probably appreciate Made to Stick more.
Well,
because there's a simplicity to it. And that was one of the things when I first started reading. And like I said, I need to check myself a little, because like sometimes if the writing is pretty straightforward and simple, I discount it. Is completely counter to like the rules. You know, the intention is for it to be straightforward and simple and digestible. And so I think all around it's a really good book for me in many facets of my life. Definitely.
well, I think the other part is it's hard to pick books, because once you see them up there, I mean, Laura and I had the panic every other month, right? We had to talk ourselves out of like, oh my God, why did I pick this book? So, you know, there is a little bit of pressure there, but it's also good for us to get used to reading different styles. I mean, you're reading a different style, and I've definitely read academic things, but you know, I tend to not go to them. And so it'll be really good for me to get more into that academic, back into that type of book. I think it's good for all of us to kind of push through that, you know, what we like most. Because let me tell you, when I started to read this book, I was like, I was like you, but it turned into like I love the book club because it pushes me through to that final chapter. It's a great challenge.
Yeah, there's a point, I really love, made a note about it. I'm trying to find it. How sometimes, a different book we read will even sometimes use the same example in a different way. So there was one that was in the 4 agreements in this, and I can't remember. Can't find what it was. But I loved that it was like just using the same thing but told a different way. Oh, I wish I could find it. Yeah, there were a lot of different things that I liked. I liked too the Sinatra test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that was great.
If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, which is huge because I keep thinking about that for like the role model way, and even this emerging leaders program that I put together is like the credibility piece that I have. I even put in my email I sent out that the partner that is helping me put the emerging professionals together, that he works at Apple. I mean, people latch onto that stuff, they'll like, I'm a so-and-so, I work for Google, and they're just like someone who does something menial, but it doesn't matter. They have clout because they work for that company. Name dropping, essentially.
Yeah, I love that, and I hate it because
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
like the cart before the chicken egg thing there, where when we're starting out and we all already have so much experience, I think that Sinatra thing can hold us back a little bit. But
I think I sort of agree with that. I was doing a lot of learning over break, and I don't have a background in social media, but I want that to be a platform for my work, and I want it to be sort of part of my brand in the consulting space. And I listened to on LinkedIn Learning, George, I don't remember, he's a chief evangelist for Canva. I don't know if Canva is a platform, and I love it. George something K is his last name, and so he's so engaging, and he talked about less about the technical aspects of social media, but like your presence. And one of the things he talked about was like, don't say you're an expert, don't say you're a guru, like basically like don't be a donk, like don't do it. Let your work, I remember we recorded, otherwise let your work speak for itself. If you are an expert, what you post, what you write, what you share, how you reflect will show that you have a sort of a knowledge base. And so I thought that's really really good. I like that because I see sometimes with recent graduates, high school or college graduates, who are like expert, and I'm like, it gives me an unfavorable view of someone, unintended. It's not that this person's intention, but I'm like, maybe not. So
yeah, let the work speak for itself.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. And one thing too, I really liked, I wrote in the book, to Sarah's point. So I don't have a history in teaching, but no, doing a little bit and then just learning in general. It really reminded me of like Bloom's taxonomy of learning, like, that, especially that concrete, it helps with understanding, and that you have to understand at the most foundational level before you can build to abstraction. I'm like, okay, that really was helpful too.
Mm-hmm.
I found my reference. It was it was talking about the power of mental rehearsal and the way that the one group who visualized success without going back and thinking about the process were less apt to get better results going forward than the ones who were doing more of the mental reflection. And that was actually in the first book that we read this year, was Organized Tomorrow Today, where they were talking about if you have an event coming up, or the more successful leaders are the ones, or people are the ones who mentally rehearse things before they happen. So they're going through the process. So there was one of the things, so it took me back. That's why I like reading this stuff again, because I had completely forgotten and I stopped doing it. I did it in the beginning, but they had like, I don't remember the exact details, but it was like 3 days before the event, 3 times a day, rehearse it, just mentally, or go through it. And then something like that. And I had totally stopped doing that. So I was like, I need to go back and review what that was and bring that back up again. So always good to reread the different points said differently. You know, there's nothing that can't be said that hasn't already been said. It has to be said just differently or different way, different story, different examples. So I'm excited about our books for this coming year.
And it's sort of like that book I was talking about, like strategic intuition. It's how do you put pieces together differently? And I think like even in this book, they were talking, I'm not going to remember where it was. It was a quote that I really liked. I might have even just been in the introduction. It was, if you want to spread your ideas to other people, you should work within the confines of the rules that have allowed other ideas to succeed over time. You want to invent new ideas, not new rules. And I really like that. And so it's like there's, it reminds me of like systems, like, you know, there are systems in place. And if you sort of believe in and follow and adopt systems, you know, the creativity, the ideas, and those kind of things may actually happen more easily because you're not so focused on the process because you've adopted something that already exists. And I think it's an interesting time of year to be talking about that because I don't know where it was I read, but someone was talking about instead of goals, it's more about, you know, what systems are you putting in place in your life? So it's less about losing the 20 pounds and more about every day I'm going to do X as part of my daily practice going forward, you know?
And whatever it was, I read that too, Tanya. Now it's making me think.
Kim, did you have any other thoughts?
No, I was just rereading some of the notes that I had written. They talked about intent. I think it was the chapter, one of the first chapters on the example of the army, where, you know, you can explain to the troops, you know, this is your strategic plan, this is what you're going to do, but then when you get on the battlefield, one or two things can change and then the whole plan is out the window. So you have to teach people what is the intent. And that reminds me of that book I loved,
Turn the ship around.
Yes, Turn the Ship Around.
I thought of the same thing.
Yes, that was this whole thing, the intent. And so when I read it as one of the first chapters of this book, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like this book.
Yeah, I love that too. The intent doesn't change, the plan changes.
Yes.
Which is then helps people, you know, if you send people out to do something with their with the clients in wetlands and something happens, they know what their intention is and can make a decision. If they just know what the plan is, they don't know what else to do when something goes wrong.
Right, exactly. And that's how we've gotten a ton of new staff this year. We've had a lot of turnover. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is to teach folks, okay, what is the intent of what we're doing? What's the intent of our rule? You know, so there's no like checklist or anything to follow, because a lot of these projects will not fit in a box. And I'm not going to be in the field with them, you know, when they're dealing with these consultants or the developers. So they have to, you know, make their own decisions based on what the intention is.
Yep. Any other comments?
I think the only other thing, I think Sarah brought it up, but I went the curse of knowledge. Damn it. I must sound so stupid sometimes. I think I'm like expressing myself brilliantly, but I have all this extra information. I'm definitely going to check myself at the door with that. That was a good one.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other example that I really loved that was very simple was just the one about the duo piano, where they just were like, we have to save the duo piano. And it was like, why? Nobody cares, until they were like, because it's like this symphony thing. It just, the ability for them to make it like, oh, we're just saying, we're not telling people what we love about these pianos, you know, was just huge. And I just think about, for any clients that any of us might work with, like how that might help people develop their mission or talk to their team about it or something. Just like, are we really communicating the essence of why our company or organization exists. Wetlands. We have to save wetlands. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Who cares about what if we lose? We've already lost 50% of our wetlands. Who cares if we lose the other 50%? Like, you have to get down to like what they mean to us and to the public.
Well, and the big thing is that for a long time, well, I think a lot of what we have to do too is translating. So I translate what an engineer says to a botanist, to a homeowner, to a developer, because they're all using different terminology. But at the end of the day, we all got to work together, you know, for what we have to do. And that's just, that's huge, to be able to do that and to make your ideas stick, to get it to, you know, terms that they can understand. So if I, you know, present something and say, you know, wetlands are important because, you know, they take out pollutants, they take out sulfur and floatables and sedimentation, that sort of thing, you know, da 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 da.
Yeah.
You're gonna stop listening to me, even though it's very important to me. You're gonna stop. But if I say wetlands are the kidneys of the landscape, you automatically know what I mean and why they're important.
Exactly. So I think being able to think in those terms is huge, you know, in every single piece of communication that we try to put out.
My stepson is a very well-known paleontologist and has traveled the world and found lots of different species and whatnot. But he is very relatable. So when we do get together, he has a very good way of breaking down all that sciencey lingo and stuff. And I call it, I need the Fisher Price version of this because I don't know that stuff. And I have to catch myself doing the same thing and being able to, not to say it's dumbed down, but just to distill it down to a parcel that people can actually get a hold of and not go, I have no idea what she just said. so that seems to work pretty well. But again, that's my experience, is like, I don't know what those things are, but is it the long neck dinosaur? And he goes, yes. I'm like, okay.
What a cool job.
I think the book talks about, like, in the concrete, like the idea of Velcro. So if you can relate it to an image or something that is more familiar. I think that one of the early examples was about some sort of special fruit. I don't even remember the name of it now, but it was like, it's like a grapefruit.
Right.
And so, you know, that I can get my head around. And especially I think with children and things like that, is it trying to make it connect to something that already exists within their world. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and on those lines, that just totally reminded me of the white exercise. Did you guys do that?
Yeah.
Where it was like, list everything you can think of that's white.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then list everything that's white in your fridge. And it was so dead on. I was like, oh my gosh.
I thought that was good.
That was like, okay, be specific, you know? Yeah, so if anyone's watching, they have you list out, take 15 minutes, list everything white you can think of. And then it's very hard. Like because you're pulling from this huge pool of ideas in your brain. So your brain's going everywhere trying to pull things. But when you say, pick as many things as you can list in your refrigerator, you're pulling from this one piece in your brain. And so like, it's almost like you're not traveling so far in your brain to pull the ideas, and you get just as many items. It's crazy. So I thought that was very cool. And then I was like, I want to play more games like that. Where can I find that? Where's the app for these kind of games?
Well, I think it's like decision making, like different theories of like how, you know, the more options that you have, the more, and the book talks about that too, is that, you know, the more variety you have, the more difficult it is, and more likely you're indecisive. It's like the jam. I think that's like the classic. I don't know who did the experiment, but it was like they put out like 4 jams or something in a grocery store and asked you to pick, and then they put 20 out. And, you know, the people that had more jam was bought when there were just 4 variety of jam, when there was 24 variety of jam. So, and that I think is relevant to me or anyone sort of in the consulting space, is like, what do you do? What is the sort of that suite of services that you provide? And, you know, what is that sweet spot between being too narrow and too broad, you know, in that space. So,
Yeah. Along the same lines with like the different offerings. So like price levels and structures, like you put out a price level and then some people go, oh, can I pay that in a different way? You know, like if you're like, this is $600, then they're like, well, can I pay that in monthly installments, or can I? And then you end up creating another level, and then somebody wants a different type of payment, and then you have like all these different options, and then nobody signs up with you because they're like, what do you do? How do I sign up? So it's like, then you want to go back to ground zero where it's simple, and then people are like, I need more options. So it's like it's a huge challenge, but yeah,
I always tell people there's 3 ways to work with me. They're pretty simple. And if you can't work with me this 3 ways, then you're probably, you know, I'll help you find that person.
right.
And it's probably Tanya or Laura.
oh, thank you.
We'll swirl Jody in there.
But
You guys
I find
can't
too,
have Jen anymore.
Yeah. I procrastinate when I have too many things on one thing to do. So I have to then break it down into step 1, step 2. Because if I haven't done that, then it's like, it's not evident or readily apparent, but I know deep down that that's the reason why this thing is not getting done, is because I've got all these things to do and I haven't said, do this one next thing.
Well, and I took your advice. I can't remember what book it was or what meeting we had, but you said when you had a really big presentation to do and it was so overwhelming, you just didn't want to carve out the chunk of time to do it. You would do it in little pieces. So you would, you know, figure out the theme of your slides, and that would be one thing. And then the next day you would come and write an outline. And then the next day you would fill in some facts. And then the next day you would maybe add some pictures. And that definitely worked, because I did that for a presentation.
Awesome.
It was awesome. I was like, oh, this isn't so bad if I do it this way.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at too. It was like, I need to get this one thing done and I keep putting it off, and I'm like, because I haven't done that. I just need to spend 20 minutes, do one piece of it, and do the next piece tomorrow.
Yeah, one of the things I think someone was talking about, Laura might have been talking about it, that, you know, the rehearsing and the preparing and the planning. And so there's 5 things I really want to focus on in 2021. And last night before I was going to bed, like some people, sometimes I dream like, okay, when I was on the beach in Puerto Rico alone at an ashram practicing yoga, that usually is like my go-to visualization. But I'm like, okay, trying to be a little more practical. And I was thinking about like, how am I gonna operationalize these? Like, and it was like breaking it down. Like, I'm gonna commit, let's say, an hour or 2 hours a week to each of these, you know, and that's how it's gonna work, so that I feel like there's progress on sort of these bigger systems that I want to put in place, making it really manageable in a concrete way, which ties back to the book. You make it concrete. And it's finally too, I'm working on we're calling them micro trainings, which really just means I'm trying not to get stressed about planning too much and over engineering with our staff on topics that are relevant. And one we're going to do in January was on really just time management and prioritization, and not even getting into the technical tools that are available, but more sort of understanding how each of us is sort of best in our day, and using that as the foundation. And there's so many great resources out there. And I'm like, you know, how do I, in the book is so relevant, like, how do I make sure that it's simple enough that it's adoptable across a wide range of individuals? And, you know, what brings all of us together is our passion for the mission, but there's such divergent personalities in how we problem solve, how we manage time, how we think critically. And so this book was so relevant to that work I've been doing this week. I'm like, okay, how much is enough, but not too much for this first session?
Yeah. And I've started finding too that instead of trying to tell everything, just kind of prepare a piece and then have a question and then expand at that point. Like I've given you the basic, now tell me what the gap is or what you're interested in, so that they actually leave with something that they feel like, whether you were going to say it or not, if they have the opportunity to ask and then you respond, and you can still know what things you want to say, but you don't have to put it every single thing on the slide. Like I've kind of tried to get away from putting it all on the slide because they probably won't remember it anyway. So kind of, if you have the opportunity to engage with them, to let them be the ones to ask questions. And then if they don't, then you can still make the points you wanted to make. And your other point about your 5 intentions for the year, like you said earlier, it's not necessarily about the goal. It's about the processes you put in place. You nailed it. Well, I've been doing the same thing with, like, I did in April, a 21-day plant reboot with Chef Kiona here. And, I lost like 8 pounds. And then another friend of mine have been doing like workout challenges together. So we're just like, hey, did you do this? And so we've done 2 30-day ones, but they now, we're like, when we're done with the challenge, we've had them stay. So the process isn't like reaching any goal. It's just, did you do this challenge yet? Did you do this challenge? And I guess this book club is the same way. The goal isn't really anything except to keep coming to this, and the results will come from it.
Well, and what I've noticed with this pandemic, and I've been telling people, is that it's really hard to stay well-rounded at this time, at least for me, because my office is now at home, and so I'm working all the time, it feels like, and I don't have that roundness that I needed pre-pandemic. So this group has helped me, rounding out my knowledge, because I'm trying to get through a book a month. They're great books, but time is an issue with 3 boys.
Yeah.
But then also I have challenges at work. We have a group called Well for Life, where we challenge ourselves to drink more water and do exercises, and then we report it and we track it, and we have teams. Yeah, so I got mine right here.
Tanya.
My husband's like, what is that?
But you have to have these processes in place. You can't have a goal that says, okay, 2021, I'm gonna drink more water. How are you gonna get there? I'm gonna drink 36 ounces a day or whatever it is, and I'm gonna track it, and I'm gonna be on a team. We're gonna see who has the most. And then, like this book club, I'm gonna read a book a month, and then I'm gonna meet about it, and I'm gonna talk with some great folks about the book and other stuff. And I think it's just really important to make sure that we have the processes in place, not necessarily the goals, and make sure that they're well-rounded.
Yeah, totally agree. And like you said, the accountability is huge. I wouldn't still be doing the workout challenges if my friend wasn't every day saying, did you do it? How'd you like yesterday's exercise? Like, are you still doing it? I would totally not be. So this, like, I wouldn't be reading all these books without this group. So thank you, all of you, for reading and showing up. We're at our hour. So Lisa, any final thoughts from you?
Probably not. I think we did a good job with this book, talking about it. Probably more about the book for next month, unless you had some final thoughts.
Nope. I think we covered a lot of different points, and glad the book was well received. Mm-hmm. And I think the next month's book was a Jody pick, and then Lisa and I both upvoted it. So I honestly don't know, since she's not here, like what.
Well, it's actually a book I nominated this too.
Yeah.
So this was a me pick, and then it didn't get picked, and I picked it anyways because Laura and I, because we run it, we get to pick our own. And this book I really want to read, and having Kim say that she liked Turn the Ship Around, I loved that military book. Kim, I think you're going to love this book. It's recommended from, I don't know if you, from my Hey Lady Friends group, Davana Marks. She is also a scientist and works at Bristol Myers Squibb, and just loves this book. So I cannot wait to read it. And that's about all I know. But if she talks about it passionately, we talk every Sunday morning, and she brings this book up constantly. So I think anything that comes from Davana on a consistent basis we should probably peek our noses into. So I hope everybody likes the book, and that's about all the information I have.
Excellent. Good. It's a great topic, and I personally wanted to read about it because it falls underneath one of the elements of leaders who lead in the role model way. So I'm like, I want to read this one.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's also, I think Tanya talked about mission, and I think he addresses a lot of like how the military does, like they don't drift from the mission. So I think it'll be helpful for us, especially in this group where some of us are entrepreneurs and some of us are leaders. And I think sticking with our mission is an important thing. We say we do, but we don't. So help us stay on track.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and Happy New Year. Super excited for a new year tomorrow.
I know. Happy New Year, everyone.
You as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Nice meeting you, Sarah.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you for
This was
joining.
great.
See you next month.